Well, it doesn't really matter what the answer was to Maximus's question about being entertained, because whether the answer was yes or no, we're still getting the sequel with Gladiator II. So does Ridley Scott deliver another epic, or will this just be a rehashing of similar themes? After his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome, Lucius is forced to enter the Colosseum and must look to his past to find strength to return the glory of Rome to its people. This new chapter takes place a few decades after Maximus showed off his skills in the Colosseum, and now twin maniacs are on the throne, and as they continue their bloodthirsty empirical growth, a Roman general invokes the wrath of a warrior now bent on revenge. This stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, Joseph Quinn, Fred Hechinger, and Connie Nielsen, who is reprising her role from the first film. Now, Mescal is wonderful as our new gladiator. Because of how he comes into captivity, he's got this feral ferocity that is absolutely savage. There's a scene that's shown in the trailer where the gladiators are up against some sort of baboons or violent monkeys, and during this, we get to see a side of Mescal that shows us just how terrifying of a warrior he can be. And I love this, not only for the energy and the brutality of the scene, but also how it showcases the rage inside the character that's going to drive him all the way through the storyline. Now, I thought Pedro Pascal is also great in his role as General Acacius, not only because he's a fearless leader and warrior, but that he creates nuances to the personality, giving Acacius depth beyond just being a general. I was conflicted a lot of the time with the character because while he's an imperialist, conquering groups of people for no good reason other than empirical power, there's also more to him that shows he contains honor. Now, portraying the Emperor twins, Geta and Caracalla, are Joseph Quinn and Fred Hechinger, respectively. Now, their makeup is such that they stand out from the rest of the characters. They've got pale white covering their faces and then dark eyeshadow to create somewhat menacing eyes. And for as good as the makeup is, it's the performances that truly bring about unhinged madness. Quinn as Geta is the more strategic and cunning of the brothers, keeping his cool much of the time, but never diminishing his unquenchable desire for power and violence. Hechinger as Caracalla is almost like comedic relief at times. He's brash and incredibly stupid, ruled by whims and impulse rather than any sort of restraint or logic. And together, they're a terrifying force because they're mainly unpredictable with unlimited power. Through a lot of the story, Quinn overshadows Hechinger, sometimes by charisma, other times just purely out of strength of character. But there are moments, especially towards the end of the film, when Hechinger gets to shine in the spotlight and he milks the deranged character for every bit he can. He's unstable and unpredictable, which makes him a huge joy to watch on screen, causing me to chuckle several times. And then with Denzel, his character is a conflicting one to connect with. He's certainly scheming and slippery, but he also has charm to him and almost an everyman sort of persona, speaking to Mescal from a sort of knowing perspective, like he can commiserate with Mescal's position and maybe even sympathize, showing some softness by providing an out to the gladiator servitude. Now, I thought Washington is superb in so many of his scenes, sometimes making me laugh because of his bombastic expressions, other times making me wince at his calculated schemes. There is a transition we watch, though, with the character that felt like it came about too abruptly, creating a sort of whiplash effect for demeanor and actions that I thought was noticeably jarring. Now, I understand the change, and I'm on board with it. I just wish it hadn't been so sudden within the story. Now, for a revenge tale, this works. We're shown early on why Mescal is hell-bent on delivering wrath on somebody, and his motivation makes complete sense. But then the story also gets a bit messy because it can't really decide where it also wants to focus, instead bouncing us between elements that are intriguing but also becoming distracting because they don't all get the focus they deserve. The other areas are the relationship between Pascal and Nielsen and how their dynamic works within the politics. There's a focus on Denzel and all his dealings with the Senate, the gladiators, and his overall goals. We also get focus on the bloodlust and desire for expansion of the twins. Then, buried somewhere in the midst of all this, there's a story of reconciliation and forgiveness mixed with grief and longing. And it's not like any of these elements are bad for the storytelling. They just make the whole thing feel jumbled because we move from area to area quickly, reducing the development on each of the arcs. But outside of some messiness from the story, the action in this is jaw-droppingly exciting and violent. The choreography and stunt work are excellent, with camera work that puts us right on the ground with the warriors so that we can see the spittle coming from their mouths and the blood gush from their wounds as they duke it out. And even when the action is frenzied, we can still see what's going on for the most part. There are times when the fighting becomes blurred from the combo of movement from the camera and actors, but it still maintains the energy and creates thrills. And like what's shown in the trailer, the Colosseum scenes are epically created, using animals, archers, even ships to carry out battles. I was tense through so many of the fights. I figured Mescal would survive through at least a few of them, just given that he's the star. But even with that, I was on the edge of my seat with my hands clasping each other so that my knuckles were going white. And in the screening I was at, there was a bit of a behind-the-scenes segment before the movie began, showing how Ridley Scott basically had a Colosseum built for this. Most of what we see, it isn't CGI, but practical sets that dwarf the actors from their immense size. So overall, this was a bit of a mixed bag for me. I was entranced by the performances and thrilled by the set designs and intensity of the action pieces. The story is a little overcomplicated, reducing the impact of its entirety thanks to a lack of development and focus on the many arcs that are established. And although Washington's story progression changes abruptly, the film still delivers an epic story from explosive and grandiose characters. For me, this is light years better than Scott's other most recent epic, Napoleon, and this is something I definitely revisit, unlike that other historical piece. There's no sex or nudity, tiny bit of profanity, and then a bunch of brutal and savage violence. I give Gladiator II 4 out of 5 couches. So has this been one that you've been looking forward to? What other Gladiator-themed films do you enjoy? Let me know about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.